We're often taught that the Taino people of the Caribbean just vanished. But in this explainer, we're going to dive into the incredible, true story of their survival and how the history books we all read might have gotten it completely wrong.
So, let me just ask you this to get started. What if a whole group of people, a culture that was declared extinct for centuries, was actually here the entire time? Their culture and their descendants just quietly surviving against all the odds.
For about 500 years, the story we've been told is pretty straightforward and pretty tragic. The Taino, who were the very first indigenous people to meet Columbus, were totally wiped out. Gone. A combination of disease, violence, and slavery. Case closed, right? A sad but finished chapter of history.
Yeah, but what if that story just isn't the full picture? New science, sparked by something as tiny as a single 1,000-year-old tooth from a woman in the Bahamas, is helping to completely rewrite that ending. And this quote from Dr. Hannes Schroeder, one of the top researchers who studied that ancient tooth, just nails it. It confirms what Taino descendants have been saying for generations. We never left. The real story isn't one of extinction. It's an incredible story of survival and continuity. So how in the world did they survive history's attempt to erase them? Well, first, we need to really understand who they were before their world was turned upside down. To really get a grasp on their survival, we have to travel back before 1492. Because this wasn't some primitive, simple society. We're talking about a complex, sophisticated, and absolutely thriving world. So, the Taíno homeland stretched all across the big islands of the Caribbean, what we call the Greater Antilles. Their society was super organized into these competing chiefdoms, or cacicazgos. And at the top was the chief, the cacique, who could be a man or a woman. And here's something that's really cool. Their society was matrilineal. That means power, status, your whole identity, was passed down through your mother's side of the family. And their cleverness didn't stop there, especially when it came to feeding everyone. They came up with this amazing agricultural method called the conuco. Now, these weren't just flat fields. They were these carefully built mounds of soil, packed with leaves and compost. This brilliant design stopped the soil from washing away. It helped with drainage, and it made the land super fertile for growing their staple crops like yucca and sweet potatoes. And this picture, this perfectly illustrates that whole theme of continuity. The conuco system was so good, so effective, that it's still being used today by families in the Caribbean. This isn't just some historical factoid. It's a living tradition, a direct link to their ancestors' incredible wisdom.
The spiritual life of the Taino was just as rich, and it was all centered around the worship of zemis. Now, these weren't idols, not in the way Europeans thought of them. They were more like physical homes for ancestral spirits and powerful gods who controlled everything in the natural world, from making crops grow to unleashing the fury of a hurricane.
I mean, just look at the incredible artistry in this stone zemi. This object was a bridge, connecting the physical world to the spiritual one. It might represent a powerful ancestor or a leader. It's a real, tangible piece of a belief system that guided every single part of their lives.
But, as we know, this vibrant world was about to be shattered. The arrival of Europeans in 1492 set off one of the most abrupt and absolutely devastating cultural collisions in all of human history. And the story of Anacaona, the Queen of Jaragua, really puts a human face on this whole tragedy. She was a respected leader, a poet, and she actually tried to make peace at first. But after watching her people get enslaved and massacred, she rose up as a leader of the resistance. Her eventual betrayal and execution by the Spanish governor has become this powerful symbol of the brutal destruction of the Taino world.
Now, what is so fascinating and honestly so tragic is to read what Columbus himself wrote down in his diary. He describes the Taino as gentle, kind, and loving. He saw their goodness, their total lack of malice. But that observation, it didn't lead to respect.
Because within just 50 years of his arrival, this was the result. 90%, an estimated 90% of the Taino population was just gone. Decimated by diseases they had no immunity to and by the absolute brutality of being forced to work in mines and on plantations. This is the statistic that defined the Taino story for centuries. This is the number that seemed to spell extinction.
But here's the crucial part. 90% isn't 100%. The survivors and their culture, they didn't just disappear. They adapted, they blended, and they endured, leaving behind these echoes that we can still see and hear all around us today. Seriously, how many of these words do you use? Hurricane, hammock, barbecue, canoe, tobacco. Every single one of them is a gift from the Arawak language of the Taino. Their world may have been conquered, but their words conquered the world, becoming a permanent part of Spanish, English, and so many other languages.
And it wasn't just words, it was the technologies themselves. The canoe, which was perfectly designed for sailing the Caribbean waters, and the hammock, a way better way to sleep in the tropical heat. These were Taino innovations that the whole world ended up adopting.
And this all brings us to the most powerful part of the story, the modern revival. After centuries of being told they were extinct, Taino descendants are reclaiming their identity, and they're armed with brand new scientific evidence and a powerful sense of purpose.
Modern genetics has now proven what used to be just family stories passed down through generations. Studies have shown that a really significant portion of modern Puerto Ricans and people all across the Caribbean carry indigenous DNA that's directly traceable to the Taino. They didn't vanish, they survived, right there in the gene pool.
This genetic proof has been like rocket fuel for a cultural and political movement. Groups like the United Confederation of Taino people are working hard to preserve their heritage, revive their language, and fight for recognition and their right to self-determination, from their own communities all the way to the United Nations.
And this image just perfectly captures the energy of this revival. This isn't about being stuck in the past. It's about bringing the past right into the future. Here you have a modern Puerto Rican superhero, La Barumqueña, meeting the ancient Taino sky god, Yukahu. It's such a powerful symbol of a culture that is not only alive, but is growing, evolving, and inspiring whole new generations.
The story of the Taino really challenges us to take a second look at the histories we thought were already written in stone. It proves that survival can take all kinds of forms, and that a people's story is never truly over, as long as there are descendants left to tell it. Which makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other lost histories are out there, just waiting for us to finally start listening?